Hello and welcome to another episode of Fly to Freedom. Today we are lucky enough to have Jacqueline Sherman on the podcast. She actually goes by the name Jack, so that's how I'll be addressing her. And she has gone from struggling with bulimia that began during adolescence to navigating years of tumultuous relationships, substance use, and fluctuating self-esteem. Her story is one of resilience and transformation. Jack, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's an honour to have you on here. So, as is tradition, I start with a few icebreaker questions. So, let's have a look. Do you have a favourite smell?
Lately I've been into lavender.
Oh, nice. Really nice. What qualities do you most admire in other people?
Ooh, that is a good question. I would say authenticity, being who they are, being honest is something I really admire in other people.
Yeah, same. When you were a child, what did you most want to be when you grew up?
A mom.
Amazing.
My answer, yes.
Oh, and are you?
Not yet. I just got married last weekend, so hopefully little ones will be coming soon.
Oh, fantastic. How exciting. Whole new life ahead of you, a whole new chapter. I love that. Do you have a party trick, or is there a party trick that you just love to have?
A party trick?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so like being a wicked dancer or
oh my goodness,
on your hands, or my brother used to be able to inhale a piece of cotton up his nose and then pull it out of his mouth, which is quite revolting.
I can do handstands.
Amazing. Absolutely brilliant. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
It's not how many times you fall down, it's how many times you pick yourself back up.
That is beautiful. Really beautiful. And last question. What is the kindest thing you've done for yourself this week?
Ooh. Well, just getting married. I was thinking about last night. We got home last night and just how I would have been a decade ago with my dress and not eating or trying to restrict, to fit into my dress and look pretty or whatever the thoughts were. And so I think just allowing myself to eat all of my meals, not restricting, not choosing the healthier option. I just was reflecting on that last night about how beautiful that was. I actually think I ate a burger the day that I got married, and I would have never even eaten a burger in the past. So that was just really beautiful that it didn't even really cross my mind until afterwards. And I think that shows a lot of growth.
It does, and it is truly beautiful. And isn't it amazing when we can just trust our bodies?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, would you like to share with us a little bit about your story and the journey you've taken to get where you are today?
I did make some notes because there's a lot of tangents I could go on, and I did not want to go down all of them. So I'm going to be looking at this screen just for some bullet points. And then, we can go into detail. I'm an open book, so whatever we want to dive into, I am totally open to.
Okay.
So I was born into my mom and dad, and then I had an older brother who was 2.5 at the time, and he was not happy about my being born. I stole his attention away and changed all of the dynamics. And I already feel like I'm going to cry. So this is going to be great. He did not like me from day one. My parents really wanted a girl. And I think it just, changed everything for him. So he was very mean to me from the start. And I never really understood why. Later, we had another boy born in the family, and I just remember meeting him and falling in love with him immediately. And I couldn't understand why my older brother was so mean when I loved this new little baby so much. So it was an interesting dynamic to grow up in. I remember he would chase me around the house, and I would be running, terrified that he was gonna, hit me. And finally, he'd catch up to me, and I would just freeze, and I would scream really loud. And I remember my mom saying, "Jacqueline, go to your room," from downstairs. And it just, from a very early age, I learned, shut the fuck up and just take whatever is happening. And that is a theme that has reoccurred so many times in my life, just not speaking up or saying anything, and taking abuse. So aside from all of that, I'd say I had a pretty normal childhood. I had friends at school. I played sports, but I was always very aware of my body. And I also watched my mom criticize her body my whole life. Just, oh, look at this fat. I can't eat that today. She didn't have an eating disorder, but she spoke the language, and it was ingrained in me. I would look at her, criticize her body, then I would look in the mirror and criticize my body. My parents, they're now divorced, and I know now that my mom was not very happy. So I think I'm very intuitive, and I picked up on all of that and was very aware that something was not right. But again, I was not speaking up because that is what I learned to do. So I remember the first time I had like a little hit, if you will, off of the eating disorder. I was in 6th grade, and I did swim team in the summer, and I lost a little bit of weight. And I just remember comments from my family or people, 6th grade. And it just registered like, oh, if I lose weight, I get attention, or I look better this way. Anyway, so I was a cheerleader. I always, was comparing myself to my friends, and I was not. They were all seemed to be very skinny, and I was just normal. But I felt huge, and I felt not good enough because of that. So anyways, my parents ended up getting divorced when I was 15 years old, and it was horrendous. I always, you could feel the tension in the house, but after they told us they were getting divorced, it was like all bets were off. They were fighting. My mom would go stay at a hotel. It was awful. And I remember one night they were fighting, and I was hiding under my desk at 15 years old. And my mom called me and said, "I'm not leaving you. I just need to leave the house right now. Like, I love you." And I was crying, and I said, "I love you too." And I hung up, and my dad had been standing there, and he was like, "Oh, so you're on her side," and slammed the door and walked out. And it was just like an awful situation to be in. And food quickly became my friend. I would come home from school every day. My mom, who finally felt free, I understand that now, was always out and about. She's super social. And I was home alone often, and I would just eat. I would come home and binge, and that was just my time. I distanced myself from all my friends, and I will never forget the first time I purged. I got so full, I could not walk. And I remembered hearing in health class about bulimia, learning about it. And then I remember watching a movie with my mom once, years earlier, and I asked her, "What are they doing?" And she said, "Oh, they're throwing up their food. People do that to lose weight. Models do that." And so at that moment, when I was so full, I remembered both of those things and thought, I've got to get this out of me. So I literally crawled to the bathroom because I could not walk. I was so full. And I tried to vomit. It came out, and I just remember thinking, holy fuck, I found the answer to my life, because I can eat whatever I want and I can get rid of it, and I don't have to be full. I don't have to be uncomfortable. And for me, I was never the type to eat a granola bar and go throw that up. Like, I always ate copious amounts of food. And so the purging for me felt like such an angry thing. It was me finally using my voice, saying, fuck you to everyone and everything. And it was such an anger thing. And so when it was done, it was like, I could breathe. I could be okay for literally a millisecond. So I purged that first day, and it was just on I think for the first couple of weeks, I did it like every couple days, but very quickly I was doing it 10 times a day plus. It was all I could think about is, when is the next time I could go home and do it? I would skip school to go home and do it. And it wasn't a quick thing, I had to obsess about what I was going to eat. I had to go buy it, then I had to come home. And I mean, the whole process took like an hour and a half. So, and then I'd do it again. And my mom I did lose some weight, and she noticed, and I loved it. I loved that she was worried about me, because I was mad at her and I wanted her attention. But I never told anyone what I was doing. And I think about 6 months after I started, she caught me. She left, and then she forgot something. And so she came back, and I was literally in the middle of purging. And she walked in, I was mortified. And we lived in our family house still, a huge house with, I think, 5 bathrooms. Anyway, she ran upstairs and said, oh, I have to pee so bad, and came into my bathroom, which she never did. And I didn't flush the toilet because I was just washing my face, and she saw the puke in there. And she was like, what is this? And I said, don't act like you didn't know. And we just had this dramatic little moment. Anyway, she told me she was going to help me get better. She was going to stay home, and that lasted what felt like a week. And then she was off in her own world again, and I was back to my binging and purging. Okay, sorry, I'm going down tangents here, so I'm going to look back.
Can I just ask, when your mum said she was going to help you get better, did you want to get better at that point?
Yes, so that is one thing that is wild, that I always wanted to get better. From the first time I did it, even though I knew felt like it was the answer to my problems, I knew it was wrong, and I knew that this was not a good thing. And very quickly, I felt exhausted all the time. I didn't feel good, and I was depressed, and I had this big secret, and the shame that comes with bulimia is unreal. I feel like anorexia is like the cool one. The bulimia is the disgusting. It's very shameful what you do behind closed doors. And I judged myself a lot for that. But I did always want to get better. So very quickly, I ended up in a treatment center in Utah. And I was there for 3 months. I ended up going to 4 treatment centers, and none of them really did the trick, but I did learn a lot at each step of the way. I did want to get better. I was trying, I just couldn't stop. And now reflecting back, I was unable to really figure out what was underneath all of this. So let's see, I guess I could go. I ended up finding OA, Overeaters Anonymous, and I went to those meetings for 8 years. And nothing against program. If it works for you, that's wonderful, and keep doing it. It just did not work for me. And I could never string together 90 days without doing it. So I wasn't allowed to speak in the meetings. And it just this constant every day going and sitting down and saying, "Hi, I'm Jacqueline, I'm bulimic." It was just like, it was my identity. And I remember my therapist saying, because I was dating at the time, she was like, "You need to go on 3 dates without telling them that you are bulimic." Because I would just spew it to everyone, like, "This is me, I'm bulimic. You need to know this." And she taught me, there's so much more to me than bulimia. I had to weigh and measure my food. So it just brought up a lot of like eating disorder type things, the strict and couldn't eat flour and sugar, no spices at one point. I mean, these food plans that they give you are not helpful.
You to restrict.
Yes.
Wow.
A lot of them are overeaters now, weighing and measuring their food and at a normal weight. So I remember the first time I walked in and they're like, "Oh, wow, how much weight have you lost?" And I'm like, I've always kind of been this same size. I went up a little bit when I was binging before the purging, and I went down when I was restricting, but it's always been kind of about this. And I was just shocked that is what everyone was so focused on, is how much weight I had lost. They assumed that because I was a normal weight, I had been in program for a long time and lost a bunch of weight. I did eventually find some bulimic meetings, which were super helpful with younger women. But again, I can never string together the days. Nobody was figuring out what the root cause was, because even though I was sitting in those meetings and listening to what they were saying, I did not in my core believe that I just woke up an addict and I was fucked for life. I just didn't, but didn't know what else to do, because in those meetings they told me, this is the last house on the block. You have this is it. You're an addict. You're going to have to weigh and measure your food forever. And it's just, I didn't know what else to do.
So it was all about willpower and food.
Giving it to God.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So eventually, let's see. Oh, I did want to share one quick experience I had in my second treatment center, which taught me a lot. So I had to, in front of everyone, draw on a life-size piece of paper my body, what I see in the mirror. And that was mortifying because I was so disgusted with my body. I didn't want anyone else seeing what I saw, even though they're looking at me. But so I was crying and I drew it. And then the therapist had me lay down on top of it and they traced me. And at the time, I was a little bit underweight when I first got there. And I just remember standing up and looking at it and being like, what the fuck? Like, I did not believe that was actually my body, because the marker was on my arm. And I was like, I have been killing myself to be skinny and I'm a fucking stick, but I can't even see it. Like, it was the craziest thing. What I drew was at least double of what I was. And that taught me, like, whoa, my mind, my eyes are broken. And still to this day, I'll have days where I wake up and I feel 10 pounds heavier. And I know my eyes are broken, like something else is going on. It's not about the body. It's not about the weight. But I will never forget that experience, because I just couldn't believe I couldn't see my body. Like, how did I see something different when I looked in the mirror?
Yeah, I've done that with one of my in-person clients, and I think how she viewed herself was about 3 times the size of the actual size she is. because our brain literally distorts how we see ourselves. And I know we need to learn to trust ourselves, but in recovery, that's one part we can't trust. We can't trust how we view our body because our brain is distorting it.
Yes. And I will say, for the most part, my body image, I mean, it's the best it's ever been. But like I said, I still have those days where I wake up and I'm like, I feel fat today. I know that's not a feeling, but yeah. And then I have my little tool belt of what I do now, and we move on. Maybe I don't wear a tight shirt that day.
Yeah, I think we all have bad body image days, bad hair days,
Yes.
bad memory days, clumsy days. We all have bad days, and that's just a part of being human, isn't it? It doesn't mean what our brains turn it into sometimes.
Right. And just allowing it to be just a bad day, and that's okay.
Exactly.
I was never able to do that before. Okay, so then I was in a treatment center and I read Eating in the Light of the Moon.
Ah, yes.
And I could not put the book down. I was like, holy fuck, this is me. This woman gets me. Holy shit. Like, this makes sense to me. And sorry, one other thing I'll say is this treatment center that I was in was different in that I felt like I was eating junk food all day, and it very much bothered me at the time. I fought with my nutritionist often. And now I look back and I am really grateful for that experience, because I ate every single meal was a fear food of mine. Every single meal. I was like, are you guys fucking kidding me? I'm not eating this pizza for dinner. Where's the vegetables? It was terrifying. And I remember the first time they put peanut butter in front of me, I started crying, and I had to go outside with my nutritionist and talk through it. And I just, yeah. But now, if I go somewhere and all there is pizza, I'm totally okay eating a piece of pizza. And that was not something I was okay with before. So I'm really grateful for that experience, teaching me that if I eat those things all the time, I'm not going to blow up. My pants are still going to fit. The sky is not going to fall. Like, we are okay. So in that treatment center, I read the book. And I was telling my family about it, my aunt and uncle. And I remember when I got home, I was not doing well still. And so my uncle told me that you could go on Anita's website and try to schedule to see her as a therapist. So I did, and I still work with her till this day. And she changed everything for me. I remember the first time, meeting her, and she told me that she had helped, I don't remember if it was hundreds and hundreds or thousands, but bulimics recover. Period. End of story. No food issues, no body image issues, no weighing and measuring, no food plans. And I was like, because going to those meetings and not believing it, but feeling like I had to believe it, it was like I believed her, and I felt in my core that that was the truth. And I did not understand how she was such an expert, but I really felt like she understood me and she could help me. So one of the first things she had me do was track. She said, don't stop binging and purging, but I need you to start tracking it. Time, day, what you were doing, what you were thinking about, what was like going to come up the rest of that day, and just track it. And oh my God, this was like the most uncomfortable assignment ever, because I was always thinking about it 24/7. Anything that happened, I want to binge or purge. I want to binge and purge. And so I did it. I didn't stop. I just started recording it. And I quickly saw how anything that happened, that was my only go-to, was let's binge and purge, even if it was a positive feeling. So after, I want to say, a couple of weeks of doing this, we like thoroughly reviewed it all and looked for patterns. And first thing was realizing, like, okay, this is my only go-to. That was shocking. But then we started getting down to like we could narrow it down to a few things that were really going on. And it was always my not using my voice in some way, shape, or form. Or feeling overwhelmed. I'm also an overachiever and all of those things, and feeling like I have to get everything done. And so she helped me figure out, how do I meet those needs, or how do I soothe myself or move past those emotions of feeling overwhelmed or not speaking up without binging and purging. And once I started getting a handle on using my voice and what tools I can use for being overwhelmed, the urges just started slipping away. And it was insane. And now, still to this day, I have those same two triggers. If I get overwhelmed and if I am not saying something, I will get, I don't necessarily think of going and binging and purging as much, but it's, ooh, I want some ice cream, or just things out of the norm, or I think I'm gaining weight overnight. And so those are really big red flags for me now. And it's like, okay, what else is actually going on here? And if I'm overwhelmed, I always go for a walk. That is so helpful for me in talking through everything that's on my brain. And then I bring it down to the bare minimum. Like, what has to get done today? Because usually my list of 50 things, it's only 2. Everything else can wait. And then I do self-care, take a bath. My walks are my self-care. Call someone, read a book. Not overdo it like I feel like I need to. Because something with the binging and purging is I was so exhausted after the whole act that it forced me to relax, if you will. And so now I just learned how to relax without going through all of that.
That's amazing. And yeah, so the binging and purging had literally been your coping mechanism. It started with the binging to, I guess, soothe yourself and comfort yourself when everything else outside your life felt completely out of control. Yes. And as you hadn't felt that you had permission to use your voice, you had to find something else.
Yeah, exactly. And that was my everything.
And then, of course, that magic moment of, wow, I can do this and not gain weight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now I don't restrict. I don't, and I'm in a normal weight, and I feel very good in my body. And, I go for a lot of walks. I work out because it feels good. I don't work out every day. And that's another thing too. And I still have all of those thoughts. Like today, I was going to wake up and go to the gym because we've been gone on vacation for the wedding. And I slept in because I was tired. And I was like, oh, well, here we are. It's going to be okay. But I think a decade ago, I would have been up at 5 at the gym because I needed to be there. And so it's a lot freer on this side.
And how long do you feel you've been free?
So I have had definitely some slips of where big things were happening and I was not using my voice, and I went to I binged and purged, and in the last year even. But from going from binging and purging 10 times a day to doing it one time, and And then, figuring out like, okay, what was that about? What am I not saying? And now it's like big things are happening in life, if you will, that I'm not saying, things with family and things that I still feel like there's stuff that I haven't said. And so that's why the saying at the beginning, like, it doesn't matter how many times you fall down, it matters how many times you pick yourself up, because I just feel like I have fallen down a lot. And so now I would say I feel free, but you never know when if something is going to happen. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think the last time I purged probably 6 months ago, and it was one time, and I was very aware of what I was not speaking, and it was a lot of family stuff that was going on. And so, but it's different now that I can do that, and obviously I'm not proud of that, and it's not ideal, but the fact that I can not go down a complete spiral rabbit hole into the full-on darkness, and I can tell my partner the truth and talk to my therapist and get right back on track. That was never possible before. I remember at first I would go like one day without doing it, and then I would do it the next day, and it just, the self-hatred and the, oh my God, I'm such a failure and I'm never going to get this and I'm just going to give up and fuck everything. And you just get back in the spiral, and I would do it for weeks until I would get one day again.
Thank you for sharing that and being so vulnerable and so honest, because I think a lot of people need to hear that sort of thing, and they need to hear that you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Humans can't be perfect at all. So I really appreciate you being so open. When you talk about using your voice, how have you learned to use your voice, and has that involved learning to set boundaries?
Yeah. Anita has helped a lot with that, because I felt like I was silent for so long. It was like I was learning a whole new language, and it's been really messy. And sometimes I don't say things in the nicest way. I'm still learning this new language. I think I'm getting better though. But she honestly would just help me by giving me examples of what I could say based on how I was feeling in that specific situation. And I can't tell you the amount of times I have looked at her and said, I can say that? I can say that out loud? Are you sure that's really mean or not allowed? And she's like, yeah, but it's the truth. And we just need to be kind in how we say it. But like, you're allowed to say how you feel and what you think. And so it's like she's given me examples of what I can say, and over time I'm learning, and I'm able to do it more and more on my own. But yes, there's definitely been some messy moments and some things that came out in not the best way. I forgot what your initial question was. I'm sorry.
It was about how learning to use your voice has happened, and about setting boundaries. So you did answer it, so it's all good.
And then I also read a book called Boundary Boss. I'm still reading it. And that's been super helpful, because that girl is a fucking boundary boss.
Amazing. In my own journey of learning to set boundaries, initially it was absolutely terrifying, and I felt like such a bitch. I felt so mean, because I've been such a people pleaser, and I always did whatever other people wanted, and I never said what I wanted. I would change all my plans to please other people. I would sacrifice myself always. Yeah. And it was so alien to be saying, I love you, but I'm not okay with that, and I'm not going to do that. And in practicing it again and again and again, not only have my relationships with the people I set boundaries with improved, it has actually empowered them to look at their own healing and to start meeting their own needs, because I was meeting their needs in my people pleasing. And so, although it feels incredibly hard to begin with, it's actually giving somebody else an opportunity at freedom and showing them that it's okay to meet your own needs and set boundaries.
I had a similar experience, and it's amazing when you do start setting boundaries that most people will respect them. Sometimes my family is not super thrilled, and they're like, "Where's the old Jacqueline that I can control?" But no, just it's my mom and I's relationship is the most beautiful thing. She's like my best friend, and we talk so much, and I hated her for a very long time. And we are both really good at respecting each other's boundaries and speaking up. And and I think she's learned a lot too through going through this process with me and with our relationship. And there's always room for improvement, and I'm still a work in progress, though.
I think we all are. I think my personal view is the journey of recovery turns into a journey of self-discovery, and you learn new things every day.
Absolutely.
And like with being overwhelmed, when I was in the eating disorder, I was a human doing. I wasn't a human being at all. I was doing all the time. And through having to rest, through the exhaustion of recovery, I've never got back to that level of doing. And there was quite a period of time where I was like, when am I going to be able to do what I used to do? When am I going to be able to do all the things in a day that I used to do? And I felt like I was failing all the time because I didn't have the energy to do everything I used to be able to do, until I realized that I was surviving on stress hormones. And I'm not a human doing, I'm a human being, and human beings need to rest, and they can't do everything.
No.
And so I was in constant overwhelm when I was trying to do everything and not having the energy to do it. So I loved it when you said that you look at your list of 50 things, and actually there's only about 2 that actually have to be done, that are actually really important. And one of those is self-care.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because when I would binge and purge, and I think I kind of alluded to this, but I would get so exhausted after, and especially if I did it over and over and over. And then I would hate myself. I would feel guilty. I would think I was never going to get better. I called it just being in the darkness, and I was just sucked in. But I would avoid my work. I would avoid my relationships. I literally had to force myself to lay in a bed and rest. And so once I realized that is one of the things that I am still gaining from doing this, is I am getting to rest. So now when I think about my overwhelm, I'm like, yeah, but do we want to binge and purge and be in bed for 3 days resting? Or can we just take half a day and do some self-care and go to bed early, and then, tomorrow's a new day. And that was really crazy to realize that I was gaining the rest from binging and purging still.
Yeah.
And I get to avoid everything, because when I do it, I'm not working, I'm not dealing with family, I'm not doing any of those things. I am literally checking out, get the fuck away from me. I am in my own little bubble, and then I'm going to go to sleep. And it's just a huge avoidance of life. And so if I take it down to a simpler level, like, okay, none of these things are that important. Okay, we need to call that person back and sign that document today, and that's it. And then we're going for a walk and we're doing whatever my inner child wants to do. We can color, we can sing, whatever it may be. And usually when I allow myself to do that, I then get re-energized and I get a bunch of stuff done somehow because I gave myself what I really needed.
I love that. One thing you mentioned, which was, it's quite funny now for where I am, but at the time, it wasn't. You said that anorexia was the cool one and bulimia was disgusting. And as somebody that struggled with anorexia, at least bulimics can eat.
Oh my God.
So it's incredible how eating disorders are so competitive with each other. And each type, you think somebody else's type is almost better.
Yes.
Because it's not the cool one, because none of them are. They're all a really horrible illness where you're existing in this prison of self-loathing and self-hatred and never feeling good enough.
And I got very into drugs that took my appetite away. And I loved it because I didn't even have to go through the whole process of binging and purging. I hated myself through it all. I felt fat through it all. I felt not good enough. The amount of ridiculous relationships that I just sat through that I didn't want to be in, people controlling me. It's a very sad, sad life.
And the moving into drugs is just looking for another way of not feeling, isn't it? Another coping mechanism.
Yes.
It's that constant searching externally for what needs fixing, loving internally.
Yeah. And then,
what it comes down to, isn't it?
Right.
Yes. We need to learn to love ourselves.
And she has taught me, that I have an inner mother and I have an inner father. And I can use and tap into both of those people. And I always know what to do if I just sit quiet and, ask myself what I need. And now I'm able to do that. And it's really beautiful.
We do have this incredibly strong inner voice, but sometimes it can feel drowned out by the shouting of the eating disorder. And so it's those times where we allow ourselves to get quiet and try and start listening to that whispering, soft voice that comes from love, that we can really start to tune into what we need. Because that voice from love is never loud.
Not normally, no. And I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and the eating disorder is always loud, always shouty. So the more we acknowledge it, accept it's there, accept that it's there for a reason and it's been trying to protect us the whole time. It's not the enemy as such. It has been, quite frankly, almost essential for a long time. But when you realize that you're not that person anymore and that it changed from a feeling of you being in control to an illness that's in control of you, and then you can start to notice that quiet voice, that voice of self-care that says, I just need to know I'm good enough.
Yeah.
I just need you to listen to me. So what message would you hope that people can take away from hearing your story today?
Recovery is not perfect, not easy,
No.
but it's possible. And, it's not going to go away overnight. Like there's a lot of work and there's a lot of figuring out what I believe what's really driving it, what's underneath it, like how I forced myself to rest after I did it. That was a huge gain because I was overdoing it all the time. Yelling, how I felt like I was yelling at the world. It was my way of speaking, if you will. And I believe there is a reason why we do it. We're gaining something.
Absolutely.
And really, I was so against it in the beginning. I was like, Anita, I'm not gaining anything. This is terrible. It's ruining my life. It's awful. And she's like, but you're getting something from it. We got to figure out what it is. And I'm like, I'm not.
We don't do anything without a gain from it.
Right.
And so absolutely there's a gain from the eating disorder.
And I just think, like, if nothing else, hope, because it started when I was 15. I'm 35 now. And it was just a lot of years of doing it every day and not being able to stop and feeling so helpless. And I would have never dreamed to have the life that I have right now. I just got married. My partner is so fucking incredible. He is the most kindest, gentlest soul. He listens to me. He lets me have my process. I have an amazing job that I love. I invest in real estate. Like I have all of these things going on now, and I would have never even dreamed it was possible. And I like myself today. I never liked myself before. It's amazing on the other side. And there was a lot of dark days that I just had to trudge through and just keep picking myself back up. And I'm really grateful that I didn't give up.
Thank you. That is so beautiful. And I'm really grateful you never gave up as well. Because, as you said, life on the other side is incredible. And you touched on something there that you like yourself now. Can I ask, when did you start to bring in self-compassion into your recovery? And how much difference did that make?
It made a huge difference. And I will be honest that I was faking it till I made it a lot in the beginning of doing this. And, just the affirmations and trying to pick out a few things like, okay, I have really pretty blue eyes. Can we just acknowledge that today? And so it was a slow process. And I also let other people tell me things and tried to believe that they believed that about me. It was uncomfortable to be like, what do you like about me? But I did it with people that I trusted and knew the journey that I was on. And I wrote down what they said and I read it. And I was like, wow, they think I'm funny. They think I'm kind. They think I'm beautiful. And now I don't need those things from other people. I truly believe them about myself. And I know that I'm not perfect. But I think I'm a pretty awesome person.
I would absolutely agree. And I love the fact that you asked other people. That took some courage to do. And to allow yourself to receive that is hard in the beginning. It's really hard. I always used to think, well, they're only saying that to be polite. They don't mean it.
Right. Yes. That's why I asked people that I trusted. And even getting married and we wrote our own vows. And I was like, wow, that was like really nice about me. You really believe all that? And so I still, again, work in progress, but I was able to take in what he was saying and believe that that's true for him. And whereas, 10 years ago, I would be like, that's not true. I'm actually not that way. I'm terrible.
Yeah. I love the fact that you said in the beginning, it felt like you were faking it.
Yes.
Because I think it does. And I think you have to, rather than say what you believe, you have to say what you want to believe.
Yeah.
You have to start treating yourself how you want to feel rather than how you feel.
Yes.
Because our thoughts create our feelings, which create our beliefs. So we have to start working on those thoughts first. And they're the things we can change. Yes, the random negative, horrible thoughts will come in, but you can reframe them.
Yes.
And you can start to say different things like, yesterday I saw my upper arms in the mirror, which I do see quite regularly. And immediately I had a thought come into my head saying, whew, they look a bit big. And that would have sent me in a spiral. That would have sent me down to even more restriction. And yesterday I went, oh, sweetheart, that's an old thought. I don't need to even think about that. They're my arms. I get to do loads of things with them. Their size is totally irrelevant, and I don't need to even think about it. Because we all get these random thoughts in, but then we can change them, we can reframe them, and we can treat ourselves kindly.
Yes. And I had wedding cake and I ate the whole piece. And
Oh, you're going to say the whole cake then. I was going to say the other guests.
But it was like a big,
it's okay to eat a whole cake, but I'm sure the other guests would have been like, I wanted a piece.
But I just, I was very aware that I ate the whole thing, and it was a large piece, but I was like, you know what? It was delicious, and this is my wedding day, and it is okay. But I think those thoughts are, I don't know if they'll always be there, but it seems like they will. They just get quieter, and like you said, you can reframe them and like, okay, no, thank you. Thank you for your opinion today, but I'm gonna, focus on this over here.
Yeah. I think they very definitely get quieter, and they get far less frequent.
Yes.
Far less frequent.
It's getting less. It's easy. Like I think of it as in the beginning, the eating disorder just wrapped its arms around me from behind and I couldn't get out and I was just stuck in it. And now it's always here on my shoulder, but I can just kind of flick it away and thank you, but I'm going to go over here.
Yeah, it gets to be easy in the end to just be like, that's an old thought.
Yeah.
I'm not listening to that one anymore.
One thing I'll say too, when I go shopping, and my mom even said this when we were wedding dress shopping, because shopping with me before was god awful. And if something didn't fit me, I would literally cry. And now, like trying on the wedding dresses, some of them didn't fit great. And I never once thought, what's wrong with my body? I'm not skinny enough to fit it. It was just like, what's wrong with the dress? That's not the right one for me. And even my mom was saying how joyful it was to shop with me. I mean, it was awful growing up. I would be on the floor in the dressing room crying about how fat I was and what a worthless piece of crap I was because those jeans didn't fit me. I mean, it's just insane. But yeah, and I was really cool to do the wedding dress. And it's like, what's wrong with that dress? That's weird. Next.
Clothes are meant to fit us. We're not meant to fit the clothes. And I mean, I know my body is the least interesting thing about me. It doesn't matter what size it is.
Yes, and realizing that there is so much more to me than my outside appearance. And that was one thing that I said in my vows is I really feel like my partner sees my soul, he sees my heart, and I just feel very seen by him, the inner me, and it feels really beautiful.
Oh, that is so lovely. Thank you so much for being an incredible guest and sharing your story. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like the listeners to take away from this?
I have a lot more to talk about. No, I really, if nothing else, I just want people to have hope that it's possible. Because I know I had a lot of years thinking that I was never going to get better and I would never be able to stop binging and purging. And it's possible. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Absolutely. And it's also really great to hear that even though you went through lots of different treatment places and the Overeaters Anonymous and everything, if something doesn't work, it doesn't mean that you can't recover. It just means that wasn't the right option for you, and you get to try different ones.
Yes, 100%. I don't believe there's a one size fits all. You have to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to put your details in the show notes so people can contact you if they want to.
Perfect.
And it's just been amazing having you as a guest. And thank you so much for being so honest and open and vulnerable and bringing hope to people.
Thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it. It's been lovely chatting with you.
And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in again. And I will see you all next week. Thank you so much.